Right guys, tutorial number 1 on the DJM900 Nexus from a company called Pioneer. In tutorial number 1 we're just going to have a look at the basic functions of the mixer. I'm going to try and explain everything precisely and concisely as possible for the partially sighted. In future tutorials we're going to have a look at more of the functions and concentrate in future videos on certain aspects of the functions. So first of all, this guy here is a 4-channel mixer. From left to right, 1, 2, 3, 4. Below the channels we have small switches, and these are for one purpose: to engage or disengage the crossfade, which is bottom center of the mixer. Left hand side bottom we have our headphones input. Above there, volume control for the headphones. Above that we have a dial for Q or master. This is to enable us to mix the sound we're hearing through the headphones. Above there we have a switch, mono, split or stereo. Above there we have 4 switches for fader start. Above that we have the Q switch. Above there we have 6 color sound effects. Above that we've got a toggle switch for using the microphone. Above that we have low and high. These here are our EQ for microphones. We can have 2 plugged into here. The next one above the high is the volume control for microphone 2. The next one is microphone 1. Right top left hand corner we have the input for microphone. You'll notice we can use either an XLR or a jack input there. Next to that, our USB input. Just going to use one track. The track I'm using is called Higher. It's by Deception. You can see to the left hand side of the low, mid and high we've got the LEDs. That will show us how high the signal is coming into the mixer. If I turn the trim down, which is just above the high, we can see that the LEDs have stopped flashing and also there's no sound. I'll just stop that track. So on channel 1, we'll look at channel 1, channel 2, 3 and 4 are near enough exactly the same, but I will be explaining how they are slightly different. So channel 1, above the fader we have a button for Q monitoring. Above that we have our color effect dial. Above that, low, also known as bass. Mid above the low, and then high, also known as treble, above the mid. Above that we have trim. Above that we have a switch. This will enable us to use different music sources in this one channel. So if we switch that all the way to the left, we can have a digital input. Switch it to the right slightly, we go to CD line. Again, slightly, we go to phono, and then all the way to the right, and we go to USB 1 and 2. Now, channel 1 and channel 4 are near enough exactly the same, because next to the USB, we can use and we can plug in a vinyl turntable. On channel 2 and 3, we can't, but we have an extra line input instead of the phono. If we have a look then at the right hand side, we have utility on off, we have a MIDI start or stop, and LFO form button also as well. Below that we have our screen where we can see how we are using and what effects will be used. Here we just have the effects dial, which is the center part of the right hand mixer, but we'll have a look at that in a second. Also on this mixer, a great feature is the X pad, and that is below the screen showing us what effects we're using. We have 2 switches here enabling us to change the beat. Below that we have this button here with tap on it. Now again, I will be explaining in future tutorials how we can use that. To the right hand side of that we have a button for quantize. To the left hand side of the tap we have auto tap. Below that we have a Q button, and then below the Q button on the right hand side we have this dial where we can go through our effects. Below there, we have a dial which will let us choose what channel we want the effects to be used on. Below that, we have the time dial, and below that, we have level depth. Below that, we have a button for on off. This will let us have the effects on or the effects off. To the left hand side of the on off button, we can set the crossfade. Above that, we have channel fader select. Above that, we have EQ curve isolator, or we can set that to EQ. Above that, we have the booth monitor. This dial here is similar to the master volume. The difference is with this guy, this is almost letting the DJ have their own PA system. Above that, we have mono or stereo. Above that, we have the Q button for the master volume. Above that, we have balance, so we can set the complete sound through the master volume to the left speakers. Alternatively, if we want to, if we set it to the center, which is the ideal position, we can have, as we should do, have the volume coming equal sound through both speakers, or we can set it to the right, which means it will only go through the right channel. Above there, we have the LEDs showing us the output to the master volume, and the master volume is here. This is the dial that will increase or decrease the sound into the PA. For example, let's say you've got a huge nightclub, that is what people will be listening to. If that is all the way set to 0, they won't hear anything. If you turn that up, then they're going to be blasted. All right, a basic look at the DJM900 Nexus. In future videos, we'll be having a look at more of the functions in depth. Practice and enjoy.